Good evening, Arsenal fans, and welcome back to Arsenal Daily News. I'm your host, and today we've got absolutely massive news coming out of the Emirates that you need to hear about. We're talking about potential midfield signings, striker situations that will make your head spin, and transfer developments that could completely reshape this Arsenal squad. Before we dive into the details, let me tell you why this episode is so important. We've got FABRIZIO Romano confirmations. We got exclusive reports from Italian sources. We got French media breaking stories about 45 million euro bids. And we got some serious questions that need answering about Arsenal's transfer strategy. This is not just speculation or rumors. These are concrete developments that Arsenal fans need to understand. So here's what we're covering today. First, we're going to break down Arsenal's hunt for not one, but two incredibly exciting young midfielders. We're talking about Alexander Stankovic from Club Brugge and Aya Bouadi from Lille. Both players are being tracked by multiple top clubs, and Arsenal are right in the thick of it. But there's a major complication with one of these deals that could derail everything, and I'll explain exactly what that means for Arsenal. Then, we're going to talk about something that's going to frustrate a lot of you. A striker that Arsenal could have signed for absolutely nothing, for free, is now on the verge of matching a Premier League scoring record held by Thierry Henry and Ian Wright. Yes, you heard that correctly. While Arsenal's big money striker signing is struggling to find form, this player is tearing up the league for another club. The irony is almost too much to handle. We got competition from Paris Saint-Germain. We got buyback clauses from Inter Milan. We got FABRIZIO Romano confirmations. And we've got some serious soul-searching to do about Arsenal's recent transfer decisions. This is Arsenal Daily News, and we're about to dive deep into the transfer stories that matter. Let's get into it. Arsenal's midfield hunt, the Stankovic and Bouadi saga. Hello, Arsenal fans, and welcome back to Arsenal Daily News. Today, we have got some fascinating transfer news to dive into that could shape the future of our midfield. We're going to be talking about two incredibly exciting young talents that Arsenal are reportedly pursuing. And trust me, this story has some interesting twists and turns that you need to know about. Before we get into the new targets, let me give you some context about where Arsenal stand right now. The club had an absolutely massive summer transfer window. We are talking about some serious investment in the squad. Arsenal brought in 8 new players. And among those signings were some absolutely top-quality names that have completely transformed the team. Arsenal's summer spending spree. Let me run through the major signings because this is important context for understanding why Arsenal are still looking at midfielders. First up, we signed Eberechi. This is a player who's been turning heads in the Premier League for a while now, and Arsenal finally got their man. Then we brought in Martin Zubimendi, a midfielder who adds that technical quality and tactical intelligence that Mikel Arteta clearly values so highly. But it did not stop there. Arsenal also secured the signing of Victor Gyökeres, a striker who's been absolutely banging in the goals. This was a statement signing that showed Arsenal mean business. We also added Noni Madueke to the squad, giving us more options in the attacking areas. And here is the key one for today's discussion. Arsenal brought in Christian Norgard as well. He is a midfielder, and this signing is going to be really important when we talk about why Arsenal are still in the market for another midfielder. Now, Norgard is 31 years old. The article describes him as a stopgap addition. So even though Arsenal just signed him, the club is already thinking about the future. They want someone younger, someone who could be a long-term solution in that midfield area. Norgard is seen as a short-term fix. Someone provide depth and experience right now, but not necessarily the future of Arsenal's midfield. What Arsenal are looking for. So what exactly is Mikel Arteta looking for in this new midfielder? According to the report, Arsenal want a versatile player who can rotate with the likes of Declan Rice and Zubimendi. This makes perfect sense when you think about it. Both Rice and Zubimendi are absolutely crucial to how Arsenal play. They need rest. They need to be managed carefully throughout a long season that includes Premier League, Champions League, domestic cups, and potentially other competitions. But there's another interesting element to this. Arsenal also want this new midfielder to allow Declan Rice to be unleashed further forward. Now, this is fascinating tactically. We have seen glimpses of what Rice can do when he pushes forward. He has got an eye for goal, He can arrive in the box at the right time, and he's got the physical presence to be a threat in attacking areas. But if he is always having to sit deep and protect the defense, we do not get to see that side of his game as much. So Arsenal are looking for someone who can come in, do the defensive work, control the tempo of the game from deep positions, and free up Rice to get forward and contribute in attacking areas. That is a very specific profile of player, and it is not easy to find someone who can do that job at the level Arsenal need. The timeline for this move is also interesting. Arsenal are hoping to sign a new midfielder in 2026. So we are not talking about the January transfer window coming up. This is a summer 2026 target. That gives Arsenal plenty of time to scout, to negotiate, to make sure they get the right player. But it also means they are planning well ahead, which is always good to see from a club. Enter Alexander Stankovic. Now, let me introduce you to the first player on Arsenal's radar. His name is Alexander Stankovic, and he currently plays for Club Brugge in Belgium. According to Italian source Linarista, Arsenal are targeting a move for Stankovic and are following him with great interest. That phrase, great interest, is important. It suggests this is not just a casual look. Arsenal scouts are seriously monitoring this player. Another Italian outlet, Gazzetta dello Sport, has revealed that Arsenal are not alone in their interest. Tottenham Hotspur and Newcastle United have also made inquiries for the Serbia international. So we have got a potential three-way Premier League battle brewing here, which could obviously drive up the price and make negotiations more complicated. Stankovic is only 20 years old. Let me repeat that. 20 years old. This is a player who still has so much room to grow and develop. But despite his young age, he has quickly emerged as one of Brugge's best players. That is seriously impressive when you consider he only joined the club in July from Inter Milan. Arsenal scouts have been watching him closely since he made that move, and they have clearly liked what they have seen. He has adapted quickly to Belgian football and has been performing at a high level in both domestic competitions and in the Champions League, which is where a lot of clubs will have been watching him. The Stankovic pedigree. Here is something that some of you older fans will find really interesting. The Stankovic name might ring a bell for you. That is because Alexander is the son of Dejan Stankovic, who was an absolutely fantastic midfielder in his own right. Dejan played for Inter Milan and Lazio, two huge clubs in Italian football. He was known for his technical ability, his vision, his leadership qualities. He was a proper midfielder's midfielder. So Alexander has grown up around top-level football. He has had one of the best possible role models and mentors in his father. That kind of background in football education is invaluable. It is not just about genetics or natural talent. It is about understanding the game from a young age, learning the right habits, knowing what it takes to succeed at the highest level. Now let me tell you what the experts are saying about Alexander's playing style. Football talent scout Jacek Kulik has been really impressed by what he has seen. He has praised Stankovic for having exceptional technique. That is the foundation. If you do not have the technical quality, you cannot play at this level. But Stankovic has got that in abundance. Kulik also mentions that Stankovic has a high football IQ. This is about decision-making, about reading the game, about knowing when to pass and when to dribble, when to press and when to hold your position. You cannot really teach this. Some players just have that natural intelligence of the game, and Stankovic apparently has it. The scout also highlights Stankovic's excellent spatial awareness. This is crucial for a midfielder. You need to know where you are on the pitch at all times, where your teammates are, where the opposition players are, where the spaces are opening up. Good spatial awareness allows you to receive the ball under pressure, to create passing angles, to position yourself to intercept opposition passes. Finally, Kulik praises Stankovic's impressive passing range. This is what Arsenal really need. They want someone who can play the simple pass when needed, but who can also switch to play with a long diagonal ball, who can play those defense splitting through balls, who can dictate the tempo of the game with their passing. So when you put all that together, you've got a really exciting young midfielder who ticks a lot of boxes for what Arsenal are looking for. He has got the technical quality, the intelligence, the awareness, and the passing ability. No wonder Arsenal are showing great interest. The Inter Milan complication. But here is where things get really interesting and potentially complicated for Arsenal. When Inter Milan sold Stankovic to Club Brugge earlier this year, they were smart about it. They included a buyback clause in the deal. Now, if you're not familiar with how buyback clauses work, let me explain quickly. Stankovic joined Brugge for 10 million euros. That is the fee Brugge paid to Inter. But Inter made sure to include an option that allows them to buy Stankovic back for a fixed price. In this case, that buyback price is set at 23 to 25 million euros. In pounds, that works out to about 20 to 22 million pounds. Now, why would Inter include this clause? Because they obviously rate Stankovic highly. They saw potential in him when he was in their youth academy. But maybe they did not have space for him in their first team squad at the time. Maybe they felt he needed to go out and get regular playing time at a high level. So they sold him to Brugge, but they protected themselves with this buyback option. And here's the kicker. According to L'Interista, Inter Milan are now preparing to activate that buyback clause. They want to re-sign Stankovic. They have watched him develop and perform well at Brugge, and now they want to bring him back to the San Siro. If Inter do activate this clause, it completely changes the situation for Arsenal. Brugge would have no choice but to sell Stankovic back to Inter at the agreed price. Arsenal cannot step in and make a higher offer. The buyback clause gives Inter the power here. It is like a safety net that Inter built into the deal, and now it looks like they might be ready to use it. This is a real problem for Arsenal. They have done their scouting. They have identified Stankovic as a target. They are showing great interest. But if Inter pull the trigger on that buyback clause, Arsenal are left empty-handed. All that scouting work, all that preparation, and they do not get their man. Plan B, Aya Bouadi. So what happens if Arsenal cannot get Stankovic? Well, the good news is that Arsenal always have alternatives. They always have a plan B, a plan C, sometimes even a plan D. That is how top clubs operate. You never put all your eggs in one basket. The alternative that the article mentions is Aya Bouadi. He is an 18-year-old midfielder who currently plays for Lille in France. 18 years old. That is even younger than Stankovic. This would be a real investment in the future. A player who could potentially be at Arsenal for the next decade or more if things work out. Now, Arsenal's interest in Bouadi is not just speculation. FABRIZIO Romano, who is one of the most reliable transfer journalists out there, has already confirmed that Arsenal are interested in this player. When Romano confirms something, you can generally take it seriously. He has got sources throughout European football, and he does not just throw names out there for clicks. The article mentions that reports in both France and Italy, so multiple sources across different countries, have claimed that Arsenal are drawing up a 45 million euro bid for Bouadi. In pounds, that works out to about 39 million pounds. So we are talking about a significant investment here. This is not a small punt on a young player. This is serious money for an 18-year-old. The competition for Bouadi. But just like with Stankovic, Arsenal are not the only club interested in Bouadi. According to the article, Paris Saint-Germain are leading the chase for the young French midfielder. That makes sense. PSG are always looking for top French talent. They have got the financial resources to blow most clubs out of the water. And for a young French player, the opportunity to stay in France and play for PSG might be really attractive. Juventus are also interested in Bouadi. The Italian giant are always in the market for young talent, and they have got a good track record of developing players. Tutto Juve claims that Arsenal will make a decisive move for Bouadi to beat Juventus to his signature. So Arsenal are going to have to be proactive here. They are going to have to move quickly and decisively if they want to get ahead of the competition. There's also a mention of Sunderland ambitiously joining the hunt for Bouadi. Now, with all due respect to Sunderland, they are playing in the Championship right now. The idea that they could compete with Arsenal, PSG, and Juventus for a player who is valued at 45 million euros seems unlikely. But the article specifically uses the word ambitiously, which suggests even the journalist writing this knows it is a long shot for Sunderland. The sources of the article cites include transfer correspondent Fraser Fletcher, who previously stated that Paris Saint-Germain are leading the charge for Bouadi. Then Graham Bailey reported that Sunderland have joined the hunt along with one of Bouadi's compatriots, although the article does not name who that other French player is. what this all means for Arsenal. So let me try bring all of this together and explain what it means for Arsenal fans. The club has identified midfield reinforcement as a priority for summer 2026. Even though they just signed Norgard, they know they need someone younger, someone who could be part of the long-term plan. Arsenal have identified two main targets. Alexander Stankovic at Club Brugge is clearly someone they really like. He has got the profile they are looking for. 20 years old, technically excellent, high football IQ, great awareness, impressive passing range. He fits what Arsenal need. But there is a major obstacle. Inter Milan are likely to activate their buyback clause and re-sign him. If that happens, Arsenal will have to look elsewhere. They cannot force the issue. They cannot outbid Inter because the buyback clause gives Inter the priority. So Arsenal have a backup option in Aya Bouadi. He is even younger at 18, but clearly highly rated. The fact that PSG, Juventus, and others are interested tells you this is a player with serious potential. Arsenal are prepared to spend around £39 million to get him. The challenge with Bouadi is that Arsenal are not alone. PSG are leading the race. Arsenal will need to make a decisive move, according to the article. They will need to convince Bouadi that Arsenal is the right place for his development, that he will get opportunities to play, that he will be part of an exciting project under Mikel Arteta. The bigger picture. What I find really interesting about all of this is how it shows Arsenal's transfer strategy evolving. They are not just looking at players who can come in and contribute immediately. They are also thinking about the future. They are willing to invest significant money in players who are 18, 19, 20 years old. This is a long-term approach. It is about building a squad that can compete not just next season, but for the next 5, 6, 7 years. Both Stankovic and Bouadi would be signings with the future in mind. They could develop at Arsenal, grow into key players, and potentially become world-class midfielders. The fact that Arsenal are being linked with players from Club Brugge and Lille also shows that their scouting network is looking beyond the obvious choices. They are not just shopping in the Premier League or going for the biggest names. They are finding talent in Belgium and France, leagues that produce excellent technical players. The article also mentions at the end that Arsenal are continuing to track a League One defender they considered bidding for in the summer. A trusted source has revealed why he would cost a considerable fee to bring to England. So Arsenal are looking at multiple positions, not just midfield. They are trying to strengthen across the board. There is also a mention of Antoine Semenyo, the Bournemouth winger. Arsenal have been named as potential suitors, and David Ornstein, who is one of the most reliable journalists for Arsenal News, has stated whether Semenyo actually wanted such a transfer. So there are multiple irons in the fire for Arsenal. Final thoughts. So to wrap all of this up, Arsenal fans should be encouraged by what they're seeing here. The club is being proactive. They are planning ahead. They are identifying targets early and doing their homework. The scouting reports on Stankovic are glowing. The interest in Bouadi from multiple top clubs tells you he is special. Whether Arsenal can actually land one of these players remains to be seen. The Inter Milan buyback clause is a real obstacle with Stankovic. The competition from PSG and Juventus makes Bouadi difficult. But Arsenal have shown in recent transfer windows that they can compete for top targets when they really want someone. The key thing is that Arsenal are not standing still. They recognize that even after spending heavily in the summer, there is still work to be done. They want to build a squad that can challenge for the Premier League title and compete in the Champions League year after year. That requires constant improvement, constant evolution of the squad. Both Stankovic and Bouadi represent the kind of signings that could define Arsenal's next era. Young, hungry, technically gifted players who can grow with the team. It is an exciting time to be an Arsenal fan, and stories like this remind us that the club's ambition matches our own. That is all for today's episode of Arsenal Daily News. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you have not already. Hit that like button if you enjoyed this analysis, and let me know in the comments which of these two midfielders you prefer Arsenal to sign, Stankovic or Bouadi. I will see you in the next one. Come on, you Gunners. Arsenal Daily News. Analysis of Dominic Calvert-Lewin's incredible form and Arsenal striker situation. Hello, Arsenal fans, and welcome back to Arsenal Daily News. Today, we have a fascinating story that is going to make a lot of you think about what could have been. We are talking about Dominic Calvert-Lewin, a striker who Arsenal could have signed for absolutely nothing. And right now, he is on the verge of matching a record held by two of our greatest ever players. This is a story about missed opportunities, about a striker finding his form at the perfect time, and about questions that Arsenal fans are now asking about the club's transfer decisions. Let me start by setting the scene for you. The summer of 2025 was supposed to be a landmark transfer window for Arsenal. We finally had a new sporting director in Andrea Berta, and after years of Mikel Arteta asking for a top-quality striker, the club was ready to deliver. This was meant to be the summer where Arsenal addressed their most glaring weakness and gave Arteta the tools he needed to challenge for the Premier League title. And deliver they did. Arsenal signed Victor Gyökeres, a striker who had been on the club's radar for some time. This was seen as a major statement of intent. Gyökeres was brought in to be the missing piece, the goal scorer who would finally end Arsenal's wait for major silverware. The fan base was excited. Social media was buzzing. This was supposed to be the signing that changed everything for Arsenal. But here is where the story gets interesting. While Arsenal were focused on bringing in Gyökeres, another striker was available on the market. Not just available, but available for free. £0. No transfer fee whatsoever. That striker was Dominic Calvert-Lewin, and he was entering the final months of his contract at Everton. Now, Calvert-Lewin was not a new name to Arsenal fans. He had been linked with the club multiple times over the years. Back in the summer of 2024, there were reports that Arsenal were monitoring his situation. And then in 2025, when it became clear he would be leaving Everton as a free agent, his name came up again in connection with Arsenal. But Arsenal did not make a move. They did not enter the race for his signature. Instead, Leeds United swooped in and signed a 28-year-old striker on a free transfer. At the time, you could understand why Arsenal did not pursue him aggressively. Let me explain why. In the 2024 to 2025 Premier League season, Calvert-Lewin had a terrible campaign. He scored only 3 goals. 3 goals in an entire Premier League season. For a striker of his reputation and pedigree, that was a disastrous return. When you are Arsenal, looking to challenge the title, you could not take a risk on a striker who just scored 3 goals in a full season. It made sense that Arsenal looked elsewhere. So Leeds United took the gamble. They signed Calvert-Lewin as a free agent, probably thinking they were getting a decent backup option or squad player. Maybe they saw something in him that others did not. Maybe they just wanted an experienced Premier League striker without having to pay a transfer fee. Whatever their reasoning, they brought him in. And here is where the story takes a dramatic turn. Dominic Calvert-Lewin is not just playing well for Leeds United. He is not just scoring a few goals here and there. He is on fire. He is absolutely tearing up the Premier League. And the numbers are genuinely remarkable. Right now, as we speak, Dominic Calvert-Lewin has scored in 6 consecutive Premier League matches for Leeds United, 6 games in a row with a goal. That is not just good form. That is exceptional form. That is the kind of streak that wins Golden Boot races. That is the kind of form that makes the difference between challenging for titles and falling short. But it gets even more interesting when you look at Arsenal's history. Arsenal's record for the longest scoring streak in the Premier League is 7 consecutive matches with a goal. 7 games. And that record is held by 3 Arsenal legends. Ian Wright, one of the greatest strikers in the club's history. Thierry Henry, arguably the greatest player to ever wear an Arsenal shirt. And Emmanuel Adebayor, who had a brilliant spell at the club. Those are 3 incredible strikers. 3 players who are part of Arsenal folklore. And right now, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, playing for Leeds United, is just 1 goal away from matching their record. If he scores against Liverpool in Leeds United's next match, he will equal the feat achieved by Wright, Henry, and Adebayor. Let that sink in for a moment. A striker that Arsenal could have signed for free is 1 goal away from matching a record held by Thierry Henry and Ian Wright. The irony is almost too much to handle. Now, I want to be clear about something. Hindsight is a wonderful thing. It is very easy to look back now and say Arsenal should have signed Calvert-Lewin. But at the time, based on his form in the previous season, it made sense why they did not. Nobody could have predicted he would rediscover this kind of goal-scoring touch. Nobody could have known he would go on a run like this. But that does not make it any less frustrating for Arsenal fans. Because while Calvert-Lewin is scoring for fun at Leeds, Victor Gyökeres is struggling at Arsenal. The article makes it clear that Gyökeres has a lot to improve before his transfer can be considered a success. He is being outperformed by a striker who was available for nothing. Think about that from Arsenal's perspective. They paid a significant transfer fee for Gyökeres. They beat off competition from other clubs. They made him one of their marquee signings of the summer. And right now, he is not delivering. Meanwhile, a free agent they ignored is showing the kind of form that Arsenal desperately need from their striker. The comments from fans in the article tell you everything you need to know about the frustration. One fan wrote that Gyökeres has been so bad that Arsenal are now considering Dominic Calvert-Lewin as an option. The fan said Andrea Berta needs to be held accountable for the Gyökeres signing. That is harsh, but it reflects how some Arsenal supporters are feeling right now. And it is not like Calvert-Lewin being a good fit for Arsenal is a new idea. This is important context. Back in 2022, Paul Merson, the former Arsenal player and pundit, was singing Calvert-Lewin's praises. He said, and I quote from the article, that Dominic Calvert-Lewin is a perfect fit for Arsenal, and they should break the bank to sign him. Break the bank. That is what Paul Merson said. He saw something in Calvert-Lewin that made him believe the striker would thrive in Mikel Arteta's system. He thought Calvert-Lewin had the qualities Arsenal needed. And remember, this was back in 2022, so Merson was not basing his opinion on the current hot streak. He genuinely believed in the player's ability. The links between Calvert-Lewin and Arsenal have spanned several seasons according to the article. This was not a one-time rumor. This was ongoing interest, ongoing speculation that maybe Arsenal would make a move for him. And yet, it never happened. Arsenal always looked elsewhere. They always chose different options. Now, let me give you some perspective on why this story matters so much. Arsenal have been searching for a top-quality striker for years. Ever since Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang left the club, Arsenal have struggled to find consistent goal scorer. They tried with Gabriel Jesus, and while he is a good player, he is not an out-and-out number 9. They tried with Eddie Nketiah, and he showed promise, but not enough to be the main man. They brought in Kai Havertz and tried to convert him into a striker, with mixed results. The striker position has been Arsenal's Achilles heel. It has been the position that has held them back from truly competing for the Premier League title. Manchester City have Erling Haaland. Liverpool had Mohamed Salah banging in goals. Even teams lower down the table had reliable goal scorers. But Arsenal kept struggling to find their man. So when they finally signed Gyökeres in the summer, there was a sense of relief. Finally, Arsenal had addressed the problem. Finally, they had their striker. But if Gyökeres is not performing, then Arsenal are right back where they started. The problem has not been solved. The position is still a weakness. And that makes the Calvert-Lewin situation even more painful. Because here is a striker available for free. Who could have been that solution? He is 28 years old, so he is in his prime years. He is Premier League proven, having spent years at Everton. He knows English football inside out. He would not have needed time to adapt to the league or the country. And most importantly, based on his current form, he can score goals at the highest level. The article poses an interesting question to Arsenal fans. It asks if Arsenal should pay £40 million for Calvert-Lewin in the summer of 2026. That is a hypothetical scenario, but it is worth thinking about. If Calvert-Lewin continues this form for the rest of the season, his value is going to skyrocket. Leeds United will slap a huge price tag on him. And if Arsenal come calling next summer, they will have to pay big money for a player they could have had for free just months earlier. That would be the ultimate twist in this story. Arsenal missing out on a free transfer, watching him become one of the Premier League's best strikers, and then having to pay tens of millions of pounds to sign him a year later. It would be a costly mistake, both financially and in terms of the team's development. But let me play devil's advocate for a moment. Is it fair to judge Arsenal too harshly for not signing Calvert-Lewin? After all, he scored only 3 goals in the entire 2024 to 2025 season. That is not a typo. 3 goals. For a striker, that is catastrophic form. Arsenal were looking for someone to lead their line, to score 20-plus goals a season, to be the difference in tight matches. Could they really justify signing a striker who had just endured such a dismal campaign? From a logical standpoint, Arsenal made the right decision at the time. They went for Gyökeres, a striker who had proven himself at Sporting Lisbon, who had scored goals consistently, who looked like a safer bet. The problem is that football does not always follow logic. Sometimes players rediscover their form in new surroundings. Sometimes a change of scenery is all it takes. And that appears to be exactly what has happened with Calvert-Lewin at Leeds. The talent was always there. The article makes that point clearly. It says the talent and knack for scoring goals does not go away. We are seeing that now. Calvert-Lewin has not suddenly become a better player overnight. He always had these qualities. He just needed the right environment, the right system, the right team around him to showcase them again. And that raises an interesting question. Could Calvert-Lewin have rediscovered this form at Arsenal? If Arsenal had taken a risk and signed him, would he be scoring these goals in red and white rather than for Leeds? We will never know the answer, but it is tantalizing to think about. Imagine if Arsenal had Calvert-Lewin right now. Imagine if he was the one scoring in 6 consecutive Premier League matches for the Gunners. How different would Arsenal's season look? How much closer would they be to the top of the table? How much more confident would the team be going into matches knowing they had a striker in red-hot form? These are the questions that Arsenal fans are asking themselves right now. These are the what-ifs that make football so compelling, but also so frustrating. Transfer decisions have consequences. Sometimes you get them right. Sometimes you get them wrong. And sometimes, like in this case, it is too early to say definitively, but the early signs are not encouraging. The article ends with perhaps the most important question of all. Could Arsenal make a move for Calvert-Lewin in the future, or has that ship sailed? It is a genuine dilemma. If Calvert-Lewin keeps scoring at this rate, he is going to attract interest from big clubs all over Europe. Arsenal might not be the only ones watching. Manchester United might be interested. Tottenham might be interested. Even clubs abroad might come calling. But Arsenal have history with Calvert-Lewin. They have been linked with him for years. They know his qualities. They know he could fit their system. If they decided to go back in for him next summer, they would have a compelling pitch. Come to Arsenal, challenge for trophies, play Champions League football, work with Mikel Arteta. That is an attractive proposition for any striker. The question is whether Arsenal will be willing to admit they made a mistake. Would they be willing to pay a significant transfer fee for a player they could have had for free? Would they be willing to potentially move on from Gyökeres after just one season? These are difficult decisions that the club's leadership will have to consider. What is clear is that Dominic Calvert-Lewin's resurgence at Leeds United is one of the most interesting storylines in the Premier League right now. For Arsenal fans, it is a reminder of what might have been. For Leeds fans, it is a vindication of their decision to take a chance on a player others had written off. And for Calvert-Lewin himself, it is a chance to prove that he still belongs at the highest level. As we watch this story unfold over the coming weeks and months, one thing is certain. If Calvert-Lewin scores against Liverpool and matches at Arsenal record, it will be a moment that Arsenal fans will not forget in a hurry. It will be a symbol of missed opportunity, a reminder that sometimes the best deals are the ones that cost nothing at all. Thank you for watching Arsenal Daily News. Make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you do not miss any of our coverage. Leave a comment below and let me know what you think. Should Arsenal try to sign Calvert-Lewin next summer? Was it a mistake not to sign him when he was available for free? I want to hear your thoughts. Until next time, this has been Arsenal Daily News, and I will see you in the next video.